start. Everybody's here.
Besides Steve, everyone else is here.
Yeah, so we'll get started. Steve will probably join us. Okay, it's 6:30 by the office clock, and so I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District Board to order. First is the roll call.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz. He just entered the waiting
Oh,
room.
good.
Yep, I'm making him co-host. He should be able to unmute. Steve, you can unmute now. We're doing roll call.
Manager Schmaltz. Manager Baki.
I am here.
Manager Taves.
Present.
President Anderson.
Present. And Manager Schmaltz.
Manager Schmaltz. You.
We know he's here, right?
Oh, did I miss him? I don't
He's
see him
here.
anymore.
He appears to be unmuted.
Oh,
I don't know if he's trying to speak and maybe just having audio issues.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
oh, now I can.
We hear you now, Steve.
Okay. Present, he's present.
Is my audio working?
Yes,
Okay, fine. I'm here, by the way.
yeah, we heard you.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you. Everybody's present. So next item is setting of the meeting agenda. Are there any additions? No, any changes at all? Okay. Motion in order to accept the meeting agenda.
Excuse me, Madam Chair,
Yes,
just
Mr. Hope?
asking if you wanted to have something about the resolutions?
oh, yeah, thank you. Forgot to write that down. We are going to add resolutions, review. Chuck unfortunately has to read them all, but he's gonna give us highlights of things that we might want to, pay specific attention to. And you can go over the new schedule too, if you have that in front of you. Can we move that to old business? Since we talked about this before, or should we do new? I'll add it to new business. Item E. Okay. Anything else? All right, and motion is in order.
I will make the motion to accept the meeting agenda with the resolutions added as old business.
All right, I put it under new business. 3E. Because it's for the new year. But with that change to a new business. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call.
All right, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Okay, first item up is permit 25-003 Belts Park improvements. We'll introduce this.
I can introduce this.
Okay.
So we'll be looking at permit 25003 Belts Park improvements. It will trigger rule 3 for erosion control as well as rule 2 for stormwater management. I'll pass it on to EOR.
Madam President and managers, I'm here to present the Belts Park permit. This permit will, this project includes installation of improved playground area, preparation for future parking area, stormwater features, and associated ADA features. As Victoria said, it will disturb 0.7 acres and create approximately 0.35 acres of new impervious. The stormwater feature that is on site is a filtration basin, as you can see highlighted in pink in the exhibit below. It collects stormwater from the play area and the walkways, and also in the future phase, which they project to be installed in 2027 or 2028, it will also treat a future parking area. The bioinfiltration basin provides volume control for this phase and future phases, and it also reduces the rates in the 2-year, 10-year, and 100-year storm events. So both of those requirements of the stormwater management rule are met. They also submitted plans that indicate erosion control, which is highlighted in orange in the exhibit. This includes inlet protection, construction entrance, revegetation specifications, perimeter control to be installed prior to the disturbance. And these proposed plans meet the erosion control requirements, but as always, the district may require more installation of additional controls if deemed necessary based on the inspections. And I'll take any questions.
And does the water move into a ditch from that point going south?
So it drains under the road and
Mhm.
then into this pipe network highlighted in blue here, and then it goes to Forest Lake, which is not far below, off screen.
Is there any filtering that actually takes place? Or just evaporation?
Yeah, the filter is required to draw down within 48 hours. So yes, according to their modeling, they are showing water flowing to this location and filtering through that drain tile underneath that's highlighted in blue.
It has a nice reduction factor, I think. So that's good. Less water than currently will be going through your system, so that's always a good thing.
And this is a previously untreated site, so also a good thing.
Yeah, we talked about this last winter, I think, sometime. All right, very good. Any further questions or comments? If not, a motion is in order. The recommended motion is there on the screen.
I'll move to approve the permit application number 25-003 with conditions stated in the June 6, 2025 engineering report.
Thank you, Manager Smalls. Who's going to second?
I will second that.
Thank you. Manager Taves, will second. Roll call, please.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, I would imagine you're going to talk about this next one.
Yeah,
Is that
I can
correct?
cover this really quickly. Just a reminder to get your reimbursements in, so mileage, any per diem basically. And I would like those by July 10th. So, and those will be paid out then July 31st. So anything from the first half of the year, please.
Thank you. I'm sure everybody appreciates that reminder. Next is the spring newsletter. Who would like to introduce this?
Madam President, managers, I don't know if was Adam planning to be in attendance?
Adam's not planning to be here.
Okay,
Yeah, he's just under the weather today.
okay. So yes, it's just spring letter that staff has worked on, led by Adam. So I'm just wondering if there's any additional input from the managers.
No, I think there's a lot of information packed into this little document, but it's it's pretty standard update on what's happening around the district, so I think that's really good. It's nice and small, and will these be mailed out just as a wraparound, a self mailer kind of thing? I assume that's what the watershed update, when you fold it up, it looks like that, so. Or is it going in an envelope? Do you know?
Well, I think most of these are gonna be electronic. So
Oh, okay.
distribution,
Good.
so
Okay,
mailing is another bigger endeavor and
yeah,
budget wise especially, so.
sure,
Mhm.
that's good. Or do we send them
Yep.
to every home in the district or not? Or just the?
It'll be go on social media and so on our constant contact and other distribution that we have on hand. So
Okay, so via our webpage and Facebook and all of that, right? When you say
Correct.
social media, okay.
correct. Mhm.
Are there about 4 outlets on social media outlets? So there's many ways people can get it.
Correct, yes, depending on the
Alright.
demographics, that's.
Yes,
Mhm.
okay, that's good. Thank you for that update. Next is the open meeting law update.
President Anderson, if I could just comment on the newsletter,
Oh.
please.
Certainly, go ahead.
I just kudos for choosing a very excellent cover photograph. I believe that is the Bone Lake access.
The
That's it.
best ever.
And the particularly clean water, you can see the bottom, right?
Yes, isn't that wonderful?
So,
Thank you for that reminder. Now let's move on to open meeting law update. Our attorney, Mr. Holtman, will be giving us this review. He did send a letter out as part of our packet. So if you just wanted to get the highlights out there verbally on the record, that would be good.
Well, Madam Chair, managers, there are two provisions in open meeting law that provide for the district to have meetings where members are not physically present. And one of those is specifically in the event of a public health situation such as a pandemic. And the district has been operating under that provision and continues to operate under that provision. And that's simply based on the board president making a written determination that because of the existence of a pandemic, it's not prudent for the board to meet in person. So you have obviously that determination was made back in 2020. You've continued to operate under that. The other one is a provision that isn't associated with a pandemic, but it's more restricted. It requires any manager who, or it has required any manager who isn't physically at the meeting location to be in a different place that is still open to the public. And it has had some other constraints as well. In this past legislative session, as of 3 weeks ago, that has been amended to remove the requirement that each manager be in a public location. And it removes the restriction on the number of times a manager can be in a remote location over the course of a year. So basically, that section 13D02 now simply allows boards to meet remotely pursuant to several requirements that were in my email and that are on the screen here. Everybody still has to be connected visually and by audio. And members of the public who are at the meeting in the regular location have to be able to see everyone and hear everyone. At least one manager has to be at your regular noticed meeting location, and then all votes need to be by roll call, as you have been doing. Anyway, the bottom line is that at this point, the President Anderson can withdraw the determination, the pandemic determination, and you can shift from operating under the pandemic statute and now operate under this one, 13D02, and everything will continue as it has been, but you're no longer resting on the rationale of the pandemic in order to do that.
Well, I think we want to move to the new language, would be my recommendation. And there's not much more to say about it. I mean, it's so much. Most of what I think the Minnesota Watershed Group was looking for is to have that flexibility. It's getting really hard, especially outstate, but even within the metro, it's getting hard to find people that will come every meeting in person. So we don't think we need to rely on that old language. So the process for doing that, Chuck, is what? We just have a motion to rescind the old language and adopt the new?
Yes, you could do it by motion, and it would be a motion to concur in your revoking the existing determination and to continue to meet according to the requirements of 13D02.
Okay, I'm writing something down here. I'm gonna make the motion to concur the existing language should be removed. That doesn't sound right. Motion to what? To
For the board, a motion to concur in the president's revoking the existing determination.
okay.
And
I will.
and for the board to meet according to the terms of 13D.02.
Okay, I'm going to let our scribes go back and take that language that Chuck just gave.
Emily gave a thumbs up.
And good, thank you. And make the motion to comply with the new language. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank
Manager
you.
Schmaltz.
Further discussion?
President Anderson,
Who is that?
That was Manager Baki.
Okay.
Manager Baki here, yeah. Chuck,
Yeah,
could
thank
you
you.
just clarify for us so phoning in would not be an option for this, for a board manager, is that correct?
That's correct.
If a manager were to phone in, could they participate but not vote? Or they just wouldn't participate, they just listen in?
They would just listen.
So you have to,
Thank you.
you have to have interactive, like Zoom type of delivery. We use Zoom, so it couldn't just be your voice. Just like we're doing now. It's no different. That mechanical requirement is no different than what we've been operating under. Has everybody got that? You have to be in person via Zoom, visible to the public and to the other board members? Okay. Any other questions? Comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
I too.
President Anderson.
Aye. Motion carries. Been adopted, thank you. resolutions. 2026 resolutions for Minnesota watersheds. And I'll just give a little brief update, a reminder. There was a special meeting, I think in February, to address some of the lingering problems that we have had with the process in the past for the last 20 years or so. And so the Minnesota Watershed Group, I went to that special meeting up in St. Cloud, voted unanimously to change the procedures so that we have the resolutions reviewed and then brought to the committees with enough time for interaction with the members, so that it's not surprising when it comes to the actual conference in December. And that's about the outline that I remember. Chuck, I'm gonna turn it over to you, and you know more about this process than any of us, so I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Managers, that's correct about the process. A couple of more specifics about it. The first draft of the resolutions from the membership came out, I believe, June 3rd, perhaps. And what you have is 10 days to provide comments back to the resolutions committee, which I suppose would be tomorrow. I don't know, possibly Monday. And then the committee is going to review the resolutions and make recommendations to the full board at the end of this month. At that point, the resolutions, as they come out of the resolutions committee, will come back to all the membership. And then there's instead of waiting until the December meeting, there will be a special meeting of the members in August, and that's when you'll vote on the resolutions. And that's to give the Minnesota watersheds lobbyists and representatives more time to prepare for the session and move forward. So if there's anything that comes out of this discussion tonight, I would suggest what you'll want to do is to authorize Mr. Kinney to communicate that, because he's going to have to do that pretty quickly, either tomorrow or over the weekend if he has nothing else going on at that time. Now, as to the comments themselves, Manager Anderson and Mike asked me to take a quick look at the resolutions and offer any thoughts. The one thing that I have to note is that, to my understanding, this present comment period is not about having substantive argument about the resolutions. It's about offering comments to put them in a form that you think better articulates what is being sought, helping them get into a condition where, when they come out of the board back to the membership in early August, that they're in a form where everybody can then just evaluate them based on their merits and then vote at that meeting in August. And in light of that, I read through the resolutions, and I don't see anything that bears commentary at this point. I think, and I can real briefly summarize the resolutions if you all haven't had a chance to read them. But I don't see any issues about editing them or making them more clear. I think in my judgment, they're more or less useful to the intended purpose, but it's not because there's a lack of clarity about them. And so real briefly, there are 5 resolutions. First of all, there are 3 resolutions, 2 from Coon Creek Watershed District and 1 from the Middle Snake Tamarack River Watershed District, that are all going to the same subject matter, which has to do with issues with particularly the DNR and also the MPCA in working through permit applications for watershed district projects. And that's been something that has been, there's been frustration for at least a couple of years now, and there were a bunch of resolutions last year about it. Basically, it's not necessarily about the substance of permit decisions, it's about applying to the DNR for a public waters permit for a project, mostly drainage projects, but not all of them. And it's just then there's a loss of transparency and a loss of guidance from DNR and requests for more information from DNR that don't seem to end, and then issues that DNR raises late in the process. So it's frustration related to just being able to get through the process efficiently and transparently. So those 3 resolutions all are about that. One of them from Middle Snake is particular. It's about the DNR management of calcareous fens, which are treated under their own separate statute under DNR. But it's the same basic issue about how to work through that. In any event, I don't, on the merits of it, I don't, well, first, I don't want to take up your time editorializing, but real briefly, I've found these over the past few years to not be that useful because they're just kind of aimed in a somewhat random manner. And I've thought that this is an important area and that Minnesota Watersheds ought to put together a group of folks to really look at it more analytically and carefully look at these permit procedures and come up with some very focused suggestions for ways to address where the flaws are in the process. So be that as it may, when it comes back to you in August, you'll discuss and decide whether you support these resolutions or not. Then there's a resolution from the Bassett Creek WMO, which is very specific. It has to do with a statute that lets different governmental agencies in Hennepin County work together, kind of a joint powers authority to work on redevelopment and water issues altogether. But it omits a mention of watershed management organizations. And so this is kind of a request for a technical fix to the statute so that Bassett Creek can participate in this in Hennepin County. And again, I don't see any need for edits to it, and it seems like a fine thing to address. And then the last one is from Rice Creek Watershed District. And it's proposing to, there's an exemption in WACA for repair of drainage systems. Under the circumstances indicated, you don't need to replace for wetland impacts if you're repairing a public drainage system. They're proposing to expand that exemption. And again, I don't see a need for edits. It's pretty clear. I don't think that their resolution is likely to go to be successful, at least in the legislature, because basically the exemption existed and then Bowser had legislation that removed it in the very last session. And Rice Creek is basically proposing to reinstate it and make it broader. So I don't expect Bowser is going to support that. But in any event, also there, I don't see a need for edits. So that I hope I haven't gone on longer than necessary, but that's my brief review.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we all do. The only thing that I had, it's not, I don't think legally gonna be a big deal because it's being ignored now, but when we did all that cleanup a couple of years ago, with language, tightened it up a bit, there has been confusion in the past about the adherence to, what's now the 500,000 limit on what watershed districts can levy. And, for, I think it's general administration. There is a section, in the middle part of that 900 section that actually says that districts that have comprehensive plans, which are all of us now, that we can budget, we can determine that, levy by our budget. And then at the very end of that section, there is still the same language that's been there forever, that says that the watershed has to send their levy to the county, but the county auditor has to make sure that it matches with the limits in chapter 1, which is the one that has the limit, the ceiling limit of 500,000. Now, that has not been, as far as I know, that has not ever been implemented by the counties, and so whatever the budget is that's turned in by the watersheds, that's what the levy is. So I'm asking you, Chuck, if it's worth even putting that cleanup in. I brought it to Maud's attention before, but it didn't get included on the cleanup list. I think it was 3 years ago now already. So there's time, I think, for me to put that together if you think it's necessary. Otherwise, we can just let it fly the way it is.
Madam Chair, I'm not precisely sure where the discrepancy lies.
I can send it to you.
I'd be happy to talk with you about it. As far as the
Okay.
process, my understanding is that the deadline to submit resolutions passed, but you know people in high places and you may have a
Mhm.
better sense of the ability to bring something
Yeah.
forward still.
Yep. Well, it's a technical cleanup. It's not really a new topic. So I don't think it probably would get that same, deep look as some of the new ones have, so.
Is it within a resolution that is still active that Minnesota Watersheds passed previously? No.
No, not to my knowledge, but I can take a look at that too. You and I can talk about that tomorrow and find out if they'll even take it, but just something to, keep on radar for maybe next year, cleaning that up, just so you don't get an auditor, or excuse me, a county employee that decides to make an issue out of that. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the board? All right, that was information only, no action needed, so let's move on. Under old business, strategic plan formatting and distribution.
I can take this one. President Anderson, managers. This item was tabled at the last board meeting. Since that time, I received some comments from Manager Schmaltz, and I can share my screen and just go through the edits that Manager Schmaltz put forth. And then we are looking for board action to approve the formatting and discuss the distribution of the strategic plan to our partners. So as far as the content goes, it's all the same as what the board reviewed at the last strategic planning workshop, which was April 29th. We just put it into a nice format that's kind of easier for folks to access and can be put into a PDF. So you've got the cover page, a little introduction here, got the table of contents. And then here is where Manager Schmaltz wanted, one of the edits was on the vision, mission, values page, just emphasizing within this paragraph, bolding and putting capitals on these, just as we describe what each of these things is, calling those out. So if you want to know what the values means, you can find it a little bit easier there. So Um, and then moving down, we had the top initiatives. And so this again is kind of pulling from that spreadsheet and so keeping that table format. Steve wanted to see some headers here. So just kind of calling that category out a little bit better. So I added these headers up at the top here that matches the category column. I had to kind of spread it out a little bit, so wasn't able to fit the O&M on the same page. So the pagination is a little bit different, but we've got water quality, got project operations and maintenance here, greenbelt and open space, education and outreach, public engagement, office space planning, office space building, and then human resources and leadership. And then it gets into the, initiative detail for some of these. And again, this is drawn from those separate tabs on the spreadsheet that Yanni helped create for us. And just gives that additional detail for each of those. And then finally, those future board workshops and meetings table here on the last page. And
Emily,
then
just a point of
Oh.
clarification. If you go back to the top initiatives again,
Mhm.
the recommendation, I sent you a sample. The recommendation was to remove all the descriptions of each item and just have it as a header on top. So you need to take that middle column out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so
We
if you
can
do
definitely
that,
just
it's
remove
much
this
easier to
category column.
read. It's much easier to read because you're not seeing all that same item on every line, which makes it nobody wants to look at it because it's so complicated. If you take that out, it makes it much simpler, and you can get and if you do in a vertical format, you can get them all on 2 pages, and you can actually have a 3-page strategic plan without the detail, which I think is a strong advantage to get people to look at it. Do you have my version that I sent you by chance that you could show? I don't know whether you sent you a copy.
Sure.
If you could bring that
Yeah,
up.
I get that from the image, but I understand it now that you explain it like that. One moment, I'll pull it up.
Visually, you'll see it. Each one stands out and jumps off the page at you, which is what I think we want to happen. There you go. You got a vertical format. And so you can see each one. And you have I wrote the header in by hand, but you have that typed in. They're much bolder and they're much more attractive to look at, I think. And if you end up with 3 pages, you can actually end up with a 3-page plan if you drop out the table of contents. So I don't think most citizens are interested in all that detail. Bowser would be, and some of our other partners would be, but I don't think the city council would be interested in all that detail either. So you basically have them have a 3-page strategic plan, which is very straightforward. You'd have a cover page, the description, the vision mission, the first set of these tables, and then one more sheet with front and back on the rest of the top initiatives. But it has to be done in a vertical format to get it all fitted on.
I understand now. I can do that. If that sounds good to the other
Well,
managers.
I think the board, if the board accepts it, fine. I mean, I just thought it'd be easier to work with it and also condense it down so the normal citizen and the city council members, et cetera, wouldn't have to go through all the detail in the back unless they were interested in it.
Is there any discussion on that element of it, of kind of the formatting and Steve's edits that he wants to see before we get into the kind of how we're distributing it?
I like Steve's suggestion, so I'm in favor of that for sure.
What's coming out? Or are we looking at the same thing that's on page 6?
You're you're repeating on each item, you're repeating the title, the initiative each time you have an action step. So it just clutters the whole page up. If you take that column out and put it up, so you see that middle column that comes out, and all you have is water quality improvement, and then you have the time frame and the initiatives. And they could be actually a little bit larger also.
I like the changes as well. I think that simplifies it and makes it more approachable for people. It moves that category up to the heading is essentially what's happening.
That's all you're doing, right?
Yeah, that's a good, revision of it. It was originally a pivot table. We don't need to repeat it when it's not a pivot table, so absolutely. Does the board want to talk about, so in the memo, we had discussed sending this out to the technical advisory committee. So that's kind of all of our usual intergovernmental partners. We've got a web page for this on our website. We can get it up there, can distribute it to the lake associations as well. And then the board can think about, in our planning process this year, if you would like to direct staff to start setting up some joint board meetings. We had said in the memo recommending if you want to consider waiting for the flood resiliency action plan to be completed. And so we'll have the strategic plan, we'll have the flood resiliency action plan ready for board review this time next month at our July regular meeting, and can have those two things, and that gives partners some time for those to review, and then be looking for late summer or fall to set up some joint council meetings if the board would like to go that route.
Well, I think that makes sense, that we wait until we're ready with that first big outreach to the public. That makes sense to me anyway. What does the rest of the board think?
So would we do both of those topics, go over the strategic plan and the flood presentation at the same meeting? Is that the suggestion, Emily?
Yeah, because it would be pretty high level, and I don't think we'd need to get into the details of it. And so I imagine there would be time for both, and to talk about the general direction that the district is going, and how that might overlap with partners.
I don't think the concept of a strategic plan is going to we don't have to spend a lot of time on that. And it's broken down by category, but I think it's important to have the first initiative that we've been working on in a public way, so that we can see an action step right at the same time that we're presenting the strategic plan. So that's my thought.
Mike King has his hand raised.
Mr. Kenny, go ahead.
You're muted.
And presidents, managers, just with respect to schedule wise, we may want to be reaching out before the conclusion of our September 15th budget deadline, just to be able to articulate both the visionary component and the strategic planning things that we have identified, gone through this whole last year process this last year, along with the flood resiliency. So the elected members of the public recognize the issues at hand and will be aware of and provide support to our to the budgetary considerations that the district may undertake in this coming year. So basically, if we can get those on the schedule sooner than later, it might be to district's benefit.
So when do we expect the floodplain presentation to be ready for the city council?
Well, so it's right now it's scheduled for the district, the board. I think it's the first July meeting. Is that
Okay.
correct? Yeah. Mhm. So
It'll
if we
be
wanted
coming
something
forward.
scheduled,
It'll come to the board July 10th.
So Mike, are you suggesting that we try to push that up then, or are you just suggesting that we, after we have it July 10th, we should try to get something to the city council as soon as we can after that July 10th date?
Well, what I'm suggesting is maybe, you know, as soon as next week, start reaching out about, you know, setting up a meeting for August. Because those city councils will need time to get it on their schedules.
Right.
And even right now, I'm not sure they could fit us in for August. It might be September or even October. But somewhere before the end of the calendar year for sure. But, you know, I think it would just be to the district's benefit.
Well, I think we had, in the earlier meetings that you and Manager Andrew had with the mayor and the city, they wanted to cooperate and wanted to get together. So I think they would be receptive to having a meeting as soon as we ask, as long as we don't wait too late to ask for it. So I agree with that. So we should try to get on their schedule as soon as possible. I agree.
Okay, we've got two in agreement. How do the other board members feel about it? Manager Taves?
I don't have any opposition to it. Seems to
Okay.
make sense.
All right, Manager Baki?
Same here.
You're fading out. It's hard to hear you. It's all garbled. Why is it happening? Does he have two?
I think it's
I
probably
think he has to mute his sound.
Issue, that's up to you guys, how you want to handle that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Manager Loth?
Can I just add one thing?
Greg, is that you?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mr. Grasky, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was just thinking just kind of logical order of this stuff. I think, we're planning on wrapping up the report end of this month, bringing a presentation to the board in July. I do think it would make sense to, get that, what we're kind of calling the final draft report, once we present it to you guys, get that over to city staff and get any feedback from them first. Because what I don't want to happen is, basically city staff to have some issue with the report and kind of air that out at a joint meeting of the boards. You know what I mean? I feel like we should let city staff have a chance to review it first before we have that meeting. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's the right way to do it too. Manager Loth?
I also agree with that. Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Greg, do you think we'd have enough turnaround time if we gave it to staff? Say if we tried to schedule something in the latter half of August or sometime in September or October?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that could all work, assuming, I think I want to bring it to the watershed board first. And so that'll happen second week in July. So I think as soon as that's done, we can send it to the city, give them a couple weeks to review it. So yeah, I think sometime in August or September still seems doable to me. Kind of contingent on what comments we get back, I guess.
Okay, we'll shoot for no earlier than mid-August then. So there'll be 2 additional meetings, and if there's comments come back that can be discussed with the board.
Okay, so the motion that's in front of us is really dealing with the strategic plan formatting and distribution. And so
Yes.
we're talking about incorporating the flood resiliency into that process or that meeting, but we don't have a motion for that. I think the way you laid it out, Greg, is the right way to do it. That was just an assumption on my part. It shouldn't have been. But yeah, it comes to the board and then it goes to our partners for review because it's gonna be an interactive process from start to finish. And we need to get their input sooner, rather than later. So I think we need two motions here. I think we need one for the strategic plan. And, I don't think we need to have that run through our partners, although we're going to be revealing that we're going to be working on flood resiliency items when we release that strategic plan. So that might create a problem too. Should we delay this and do it? I think what we were talking about before is doing something together, at least on a preliminary basis. But do we want to? That's the question in my mind. Or do we need to? Have we been talking at all to our partners about doing the green belt and open space details? I mean, that kind of fits in with the flood plain, but have we talked to our partners about that?
Madam
So they
President,
know,
yes,
yes.
managers, yes, both in our quarterly meetings and then also we have received letters of support for our Lizard Sands Out to Heritage Fund grant application on this topic as well. So,
And what kind of response have we had from our local partners when you talked about it? Good?
yes, they're positive. They feel it makes sense. Of course, they want to be involved. They understand it. And
Mhm.
the city of Forest Lake has concern that somehow we would be taking developable land. But that's, that we don't see that in any scenario. The only, we'd really be looking at wetland restoration or wetland enhancements and things like that. So,
I'm just looking really quickly at the Greenbelt and Open Space Initiative detail on page 8, just to see if we've mentioned in there, meeting with our partner, here it is, engage partners in project planning, funding, and community engagement initiatives related to flood resilience and Greenbelt expansion. So we've mentioned it in the strategic plan. So I don't think there's gonna be a problem if we're all satisfied with this strategic plan to release that. And sending a copy over to each of our partners, in person, dropping it off or manually by mail so that they get it quickly. And then posting it online. I don't see any problem with that. And then dealing with the, the flood, issues at a later time, as was suggested by Mr. Grasky, is that when we're finished with our plan, make sure that after the board approves it conditionally based on input from the public or our partners, that we continue down that path as we just talked about, trying to get that set up in August. Does that work?
I just have one,
Everybody?
Manager Anderson, I have my hand up, but just one
Okay.
comment. I think that staff has done a good job meeting with the staff, with the city and so forth, but I'm not sure that information has got up to the city council. And maybe they could comment about that, but I would assume it hasn't been. So we have three new city council members, so they have no idea what we're really working on. So having a strategic plan in 3 pages would give them a good understanding, or at least a good vision of the things we're working on. So that would be helpful, I think.
Okay, so you're in agreement then?
Yes.
All right. Everybody else understand what we're talking about here? Okay, so it seems that this memo, or excuse me, this motion, this proposed motion will function for us right now. Is there anyone who wants to make this motion?
I'll move to approve the enclosed strategic plan and direct staff to post on the district website and share with partners. I would like to make one request so that we actually see the final version before it goes out again.
Yes.
Yep, I can send it out. I could email it out to the board tomorrow, and then we can email it out to the partners, the technical advisory committee, early next week.
And are we going to send out, another question here, are we going to send out all the detailed plans of each initiative, or are we just going to send the shortened version to the city council? My thought would be that we just send the shortened version to start spoon feeding them before we ask them to get involved with a lot of detail. If we send out another 6 pages of detail, I think a lot of people may just toss it in the trash can. But if it's only 3 pages, at least you'll look at the pages, I think. Front and back, 3 pages.
Manager Schmaltz, I could clarify, I wasn't planning on emailing it to the city councils. It was more at the staff level that we'd be emailing it out to and sending to lake associations and putting on the website.
Okay, so you're looking feedback from the staff and not the city, not getting the city council involved. I thought we were going to talk about getting the city council involved. But maybe my misunderstanding. So I don't know, how does everybody else feel?
Well, I think we need to be clear in what our intention is, and if we are sending things to the staff, maybe there should be a cover memo that encourages them to have initial discussions with their councils. And we can put in that memo what our rollout plan is to include the councils and citizens from that area, or each of our areas.
Wait, Kenny's hands down.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, go ahead.
Madam President, managers, just thinking timeline, it might be beneficial if there was a letter from the board president to the respective chairs, along with the, just saying, we'd like to introduce you to here's our strategic plan. And at least because, we can certainly get it to the staff first and then follow up.
Can I make a suggestion here? This is getting really complicated. Let's put this on hold until that memo letter is done and the changes are made, and put this on the agenda for Monday. I know it's a special meeting, but I think we have time to post that, don't we? If we do it tomorrow or today? No, it's too much, too late today. If we can get that posted so we can add it to Monday's meeting, we can take care of all of this stuff, see the final strategic plan as edited, and then I can work on a cover letter with you, Mike.
I think the meeting notice, we sent out an email today, but I do believe that if we sent out a revised one tomorrow, that would still meet the open meeting law requirements. So we can add strategic plan as an action item to that special meeting agenda before the budget workshop.
Is the board okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
Yep.
Okay, good. So we'll just table this item until Monday.
Will you have a cover letter by then, Manager Anderson?
Yeah, I think I can get it done tomorrow.
Because that's an important part of the package, I think.
Of course. Are you gonna be available tomorrow, Mike?
I'm not planning on it.
Okay. Well, maybe I can, work with Chuck to make sure I'm not saying things I shouldn't say in the letter. And then would that be okay with you? I'll bring it, the copy will come to everybody, hopefully, this weekend sometime, and then we can make any changes on Monday when the board sees when we're all together for that meeting.
Yeah, and there's no fire, right? We don't have any specific timeline. If the letter and other things, we wanted to wait until the following regular meeting in June, that can be fine as well. So,
Okay, I got a sense that you wanted to get this out to the public as fast as possible. That not true?
I did, but I was more talking about scheduling meetings,
Mhm.
not necessarily, but
Well, that's fine. We can wait until the next meeting if that's okay with you.
it's up to the board.
We're seeking your guidance. When do you want to have it ready for people?
Well, I think we could have the revised document. If it's ready for Monday, that would be fine. And then probably take a little more time, and then at the next regular meeting, have the letter for discussion. And then we could also just formulate, I think, a little bit more about what our timelines and schedules for different organizations, how many, we would normally have meetings with Washington County in the fall, right? October, early November. And then, we have not done a joint meeting with our other LGUs, cities in particular, for some time. So some of them probably have near complete turnovers in their councils. So we will have quarterly meetings with some of our partners coming up here, and we could just discuss that with the administrators about getting it on the schedule and just see
Okay.
how that falls. So,
All right, so we'll postpone this item until Monday to see the revised presentation of the strategic plan. Correct? And then the letter will come later for distribution at a future meeting for the board to approve, and then we will send it out to the community partners. Okay, all right.
yes. Thank you.
Everybody understand that? Do we have to have a formal motion, Chuck, or can that just be instruction?
Well, Madam Chair, for now, you don't need a motion. You've given direction to staff to renotice the special meeting to add this. And Manager Schmaltz did make the recommended motion, but there was not a second, so there's no need to take action on that either.
Okay, very good. All right, we have a plan. Thank you. Next. Where are we next? 2026 budget and projects. Just a little intro. Mike put it in his forward on this topic. I had asked for some more detail. This is background. It wasn't meant to be a discussion item tonight. But just some detail background in our deliberation over the budget. So take that for that purpose. If there's any questions, obviously, we should answer those tonight, but this is something that we've typically had something from district engineers as we're getting into sub-watershed work. And so it's a little bit more background and detail as we move into that discussion. Any questions? Comments? Okay, let's move on then. Next is project update. 5A. Who's gonna do this?
Madam President, let's see, Blaine jump in here or not? Oh. Did I not see him? Okay, I thought maybe it's earlier. So yeah,
Oh,
just
well,
give it,
Anna's here from EOR. I mean, if there's anything she's involved in, she can do it.
absolutely.
Anne?
Sure, Madam President and managers. I'll give an update on some of the projects that we've been working on with Blaine, but I know that he has put together something in the board packet as well. We have been actively storm chasing for our diagnostic monitoring on the Sunrise River headwaters, and we have been diligently working to get the flood mitigation, flood resiliency action plan out for the end of the month and for your viewing next month, as Greg talked about. We've also are putting together a scope for the green belt visioning, and that will also come to that same board meeting. We've also been working on some updates that might be necessary to evaluate any external loading from Shields Lake watershed to determine if there's any hotspots that we can identify from the DIY monitoring that we need to turn into diagnostic studies. Greg, you can jump in as well, but that is what we've been working on, quite a bit of scoping and also getting final deliverables out to you all.
Yeah. I have one question on this. Have we received an additional mapping of the Comfort Lake subwatershed from Forest Lake stormwater? Where are we at on a percentage basis? Do we have 40% of it, 10% of it, 75% of it? Where are we at with understanding the water that's coming from the city of Forest Lake?
Greg, have you been talking to the city about the storm network?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put an exact percentage on it. I think we had worked with them to get quite a bit of information. We got what we needed for our modeling, and or we went out and surveyed it ourselves. So I think we have the information we need. I wouldn't say that the city's mapping is, necessarily 100% complete like we'd like to see it, but it does meet kind of the state requirements, and we've gotten what we needed for our modeling purposes. So kind of a roundabout answer, but hopefully that gives a little bit of clarity.
Well, yeah, it's kind of the same sad answer that we've had for 20 some years, probably longer than that. What is left to do? Do we have, you don't have to answer it tonight if you don't have the info, but it's pretty easy, I would think, to take our subwatershed and put a map together that says this is where all the culverts are, this is where all the piping is, this is where the stormwater ponds are, so that we have an idea of what is happening and what's coming at us.
Yeah, I would say they have that 100% complete. I think they have a map that shows where all their infrastructure is, and that meets the state requirements. What they don't necessarily have, and maybe it's just too big a ask, is, survey information on all of that infrastructure. So, it's one thing to map it all. It's a whole lot larger effort to survey all of that and have elevations and pipe sizes and all that good stuff.
Yeah,
So-
well, we've talked about this in the past, and there is money still available for improving stormwater systems. And a lot of money. The last I saw, year and a half, 2 years ago, was 300 million. I doubt that that's all been spent. So if we can figure out exactly what we need for our purposes, then we don't have to approach this from a guessing standpoint. That's what troubles me, is that we're going to be doing work without actually knowing what the foundation of that area is, and that doesn't seem like it's the right way to go. We need to understand what's coming at us, what hasn't been done, so that we can get those corrections made before we start doing big projects.
Yeah, I guess I would say we like I said, we have what we need. So if the city didn't have it, we went out and surveyed it ourselves. So from what the watershed needs for the purposes of its, H&H model, plain planning, we have what we need. So I'd say maybe that's good enough, and maybe we should just move on from this topic, because like you
Well,
said, we've been
can you-
talking about it for 20 years.
Manager Anderson,
Yeah.
can I make a comment?
Yes,
I think, we're supposed to operate on the 80-20 rule. And, if we don't need the information, there's no use pushing people and spending money to get it if we're not going to know how to use it. So what Greg's saying is that where they've had to have the information that we didn't have, they went out and got it either from the city, or they spent the money to do the surveying so we could run accurate models. And I think that's a smart way to do it. I mean, because why should we spend the money if we're not going to use it? So when we have a need to get it, we'll just spend the money and do it. I guess that's a simple way to say it. And I hate to see us continually trying to get complete information when we can't afford to have complete information in terms of the decisions we need to make. So just a point of information in terms of how we want to operate. And I think to ask the city to do stuff that they really don't have to do for us is poking the pig at the wrong time, I think, at the wrong place. So just a thought. So I'm kind of agreeing with Greg right now in terms of what he's been doing.
well, you've been agreeing with Greg for a long time. So my point is that if we don't know where we're at with our knowledge base, we don't know if we have 40% of the information or we have 75% of the info, then how can we actually do planning on climate change, on they don't want to call that anymore, but just on the extreme weather events? If we're getting too much water with rain events, unless that's changed, that we've been talking about for the last 4 or 5 years pretty intensely, and we don't know where water's coming from through outlets, through the overground, through illegal laterals, could be all kinds of things happening that we don't know about. So are we willing to take that risk of moving forward with projects when we don't know what the true input is? We've got people along Bixby Park that came to one of our public meetings talking about how that channel behind them is getting flooded to the point where it's interrupting their backyards. It's impacting their backyards. So with every heavy rain, we're going to allow that to continue. That's part of Forest Lake. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
That's a good example of maybe where we should get some information. But for the other people that haven't complained, then maybe we don't have a need to do the survey work in that area. And as my understanding is, we've already got a priority list of high important areas from the work that we've done already. So we've got probably more than enough to work on. But if we get additional information that says we should look at another area, I'm sure the engineering firm will do that for us if it's required.
Yeah, and maybe what I'm saying is being misinterpreted enough. So we have all the data we need for that floodplain resiliency study. So
Right.
we either got it from the city, from the mapping that they have, or from plans and as-built that we could track down. And then the pieces that were left that were missing, we went out and surveyed those. So for those floodplain study areas, we have all the data we need.
And is that part of the slideshow that we got some months ago? Is that part of that presentation?
I'm not sure which presentation you're speaking of.
Well, you're talking about priority floodplain areas. We got some mapping that showed us those priority areas.
Yep,
And that's
yep.
the foundation
So-
of how we're moving forward. So
Yep.
is that what you're talking about?
Yep, so those are the areas that I'm talking about. We have 100% of the information we need for those areas.
Okay. And how did you determine that there weren't other areas that were available? Or that were not available? Yeah, I just don't know how you make that decision.
Well, I
So,
suspect if we had modeling courses and had the training, we would understand it.
Are you confident that the areas you didn't look at are not going to be problems? You said you have had enough information to determine what the priority areas were. But if you're not
Okay.
looking at all of the areas, how do you know that's to be true? What's your
so, so for that entire
equilibrium?
study area, we determined where the infrastructure was, where the data gaps were, and then went out and filled in those data gaps where needed.
All right, I think I'll take this offline to get. Maybe there needs to be two maps put together or something, but I'm just not understanding how we
Well,
got whole and we're making decisions. That's all. You know, I have a right to speak here too, Steve, so we're gonna
No, I
move
know, but I'm
on.
saying that if we're
We're
gonna
gonna
do,
move on.
if we're gonna do additional work and we're gonna spend additional money, then the board should approve it. So I'm for that. So
Well,
anything you would like to have done, it should come to the board because we're
Yeah.
looking for money for the next couple of years. And we
But
have
you
to
don't
be
have to
careful
tell, you
where
don't
we
have
where we
to tell
spend
me
money.
that. You do not have to tell me that, but it's okay for me to ask questions about projects that are going to be coming up in the Comfort Lake sub-watershed area. That's what we're doing. We're budgeting for that work, just like we did in all the others. And I wanna make sure that we've got everything covered so that we're not gonna have surprises. All right, let's move on.
Are we on
So,
project? I had a question. I had a question on the project. We didn't go through Blaine's slides, so I did have a question on the iron enhanced sand filter. If we could put that slide up for that part of the presentation. I don't know who has control of the slides, but
Yeah, give me just a second then.
Madam President, Manager Smolch, which one?
I don't have them in front of me here. So can you just, because I didn't make copies, there was too much to copy. So if you could just flip through that presentation, there's three
the little-
slides.
Yeah, the little comfort one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the most expensive project we've done. And I guess the question, if I recall, was that there's a 40% match on that program.
No,
I read somewhere in one of those slides that there was a 40% match. You know what? I'll just go offline and send you.
that was Highway 61 project. That was so expensive.
Because I thought we always had like a 10 or 20% match, and I was surprised to see a 40% match. And I was wondering if someone could just explain that to the board so we're aware of why there's such wide differences on grants like that. Because I thought they were all around 10 or 20% match. And to have a local contribution of 40% surprised me.
Correct. That so I think you saw that under the budget and projects. In the last item, there was a note. Or was it? I saw it earlier as well, that just how much the Highway 61 project, it was in the actually in the education piece, spring newsletter. Highlighted how much that particular project cost.
Okay.
So
We've known that We've known that for a couple of years, though. I mean, that was released right when that project finished.
Correct, yeah, the district match was 640,000, which is unusual, you know, it was initially conceived, but that's, you know, with all the COVID, inflation, pricing, things like that, that really ballooned. We did get some additional money from the Lower St. Croix, 300,000, and then we used some of our 319 money, 100,000 as well. But, you know, yes, that was an expensive project. The other Iron Hand Sand Filter on County Road 50 will be similar, and so will this one on Heath Avenue. All in the roughly $1.5 million category.
But
Now
not with
that-
a 40% match, though, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
This one, we that's the largest grant request that we have ever made to Clean Water Fund, and the largest one that was approved.
Yeah, well, like I said, we talked about this 61. I don't want to call it an overrun. It was just a set of circumstances that led to the project being more mainly driven by death in the owner's family, waiting for that transaction to be resolved, and then the COVID situation increasing a lot of the pricing when the project finally could be done. So we've talked about this. This is one of the reasons that our reserve fund went down. And we need to be talking about that at the budget time to make up for that. So I think
Okay,
we've talked
thanks for
about
the
that in
explanation.
prior meetings. But let's move on. Is there anything else with this slideshow? Can we move on to the next one?
Well, we haven't covered the program. I thought that the land acquisition and management,
No,
Fine,
I'm
good.
not there yet. I thought there
Okay.
was more project updates. Do we have more project updates? EOR, any more on the project updates?
Sure, we can
Madam
keep-
President, Aiden's here. He's can talk about the North Shores
Okay,
Circle project. These are outside the typical EOR projects.
all right, very good, thank you. Aiden?
Hi, Madam Chair, Managers, did I hear there's a question about North Shore Circle Park?
I don't know if there's a question. I think there's just an update for you to provide to us.
Yeah, let me pull up the project update slides. Yeah, the project is complete. So we are in the establishment maintenance phase of that project. There's a photo provided in the slides of the conditions of the site last week. So implementation went very smoothly. It was a lot of work to get this small little patch of the lake restored to its current condition, but everything overall went very smoothly. So the contractor will be doing establishment maintenance through September, and then the watershed district will take on maintenance of this site. We are still the only part of the project that's outside of our control that we're waiting on is for the city to put in a gravel path and pad. Our work is completed as far as we're concerned with the actual project implementation.
Yeah.
And we'll be putting in some signage once that pad is placed as well.
Okay, wonderful. Any further questions?
I just have
President
one.
Anderson, I just had a quick.
No, Chris,
Cool.
go ahead.
Steve.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Okay.
I just had a quick
Manager
question.
Lowe?
Thank you. How long will the fence, the snow fence be up?
Yeah, the fence will be up probably through the end of the growing season.
Okay.
I'll talk to the contractors about removal at the end of the establishment maintenance period, which runs through September. And that's it's to keep all critters out, both
Yeah.
human and other.
Sure. Excited to see this done.
Yeah. Okay, Manager Schmalz, you had something?
Yeah, I had a question on this project for Mike. Mike, we were gonna go ahead. This is stated as having a 0.1 pound reduction. And we spent $35,000, I think, or at least the grant was $35,000. Are we continuing to work with the university on trying to get a better handle on some of the things we've been talking about in this area of shoreline restoration? I know you were going to go ahead and do that. I was just kind of wondering if we're still moving ahead with that or where that stands.
Well, yes, I mean, so we're current work with the St. Anthony Falls Lab and Stormwater Research Council is more on the benefit of erosion sediment control, not specifically on the calculated benefit of shoreline loss. And that's, so there's a couple different models and they'll give you about that same 0.1, 0.2, 0.25, depending on the condition. But again, just like we know from the other SWA work, sub-watershed analysis, modeling work, compared to the diagnostic work, you can be significantly off. It's very much based off of what the actual lateral recession is, which is unknown at this point in terms of the rate of recession. And so we have talked about, we have not put a real plan of action yet to see, try to find some particular sites around the lake to see to get some survey work of original survey work to see how much recession has actually occurred, erosion. Then we would have a much better number in terms of what that loss is.
Okay, thank you.
If I might add as
Okay.
well, just briefly on that topic.
Mhm.
And so I believe that I'm probably the one who calculated that 0.1 pounds of phosphorus per year. And the way we looked at that was, that's basically the reduction from overland flow. What we did not include in that calculation is what Administrator Kinney is referencing, which is the calculation of how much, soil has been lost from that actual shoreline. The error in that is very high if you don't have a very good sense of what the time period of that erosion has been. And which is why we can see these shoreline projects with really high phosphorus reduction estimates. I wasn't comfortable estimating that. And so 0.1 is likely an underestimate. I'll run the numbers again once we have the full dimensions of this project measured out. But that's where that, difference in numbers can come from.
Okay, thanks, Aiden.
Thanks for that. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's move on to the program update, land acquisition and management.
That would be me. Thank you, Madam Chair, managers. Tori, would you prefer I share my screen?
If you have it up already, I would love that.
I can do that. All right, you should be looking at a slide that reads Land Management Program Update. So we'll be brief here, just giving you a broad strokes overview of what this program is about and some of our accomplishments to date. So overall, this program is part of our district mission to protect and enhance water resources. And the way we do this is by identifying specific properties that require protection, that further our goals of improving water resources, or have some other very compelling, natural resource element to them, such as habitat, water storage and treatment would be examples of those. And then we're going to focus on North Shore Trail Nature Area in this presentation, just as it's a good item for us to highlight. Here are the district owned parcels. These exclude easements. We have a number of easements for projects across the watershed. These are the owned properties. North Shore Trail Nature Area being the most famous of them, I think, although you see Highway 61 wetlands to the north, a patch of tax forfeited property right on the Chisago, Washington border. The Hayward Avenue wetland would be another recent acquisition, and then the Hoole property out to the west.
Aiden, how much acreage is that tax forfeit property on Washington side of the county line up in the upper left?
Let me do my really quick math here.
Okay.
Well, that can't be right. I have it at about 40 acres, just looking at the numbers I have here. That sounds like a little high, but
I think that's about right. I
sure.
couldn't remember if it was 30 or 40, but that sounds about right. So we still have that Washington tax forfeit property.
I will pull up a spreadsheet here as I have an
Okay.
opportunity to that has that exact number in it.
Okay,
Here's a breakdown of the other properties that are not the tax forfeited ones. I should have had that one included as well. But you can see 42 acres is Highway 61, 19 is North Shore Trail Nature Area, 3 for the Hayward Avenue wetland, and then 10 for the Hoole Trust, and then the remainder would be that tax forfeited property. And that's 14 parcels consisting of nearly 100 acres. Here you can see that Highway 61 wetland project in construction. Just a quick update on some of the activities we do to manage these. So each of these properties, once they're acquired, have a management plan that we develop. One of the activities that we participate in as part of those management would be tree and shrub planting. So in both 2024 and then 2025, we planted, or staff planted 175 trees and shrubs at a couple different sites. This year we did Hayward Avenue, North Shore Trail Nature Area, and the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter Project. And so using bare root stock, you have pretty high mortality, but this is a good way for us to just kind of help jumpstart some of the restoration of these areas and provide more habitat. And then also the bare root stock that we pick typically has pretty high water quality benefits once those species establish. This year we used red osier dogwood, river birch, and we do get to experiment a little bit with some climate adapted species. River birch, for example, is not necessarily commonly considered to be native to our area, but as we lose some of our ash trees, river birch is a potential climate adapted species that we can be introducing.
Hey, President
Buckthorn
Anderson,
removal.
can I ask Aiden a quick question?
please, go ahead.
I was just curious because you did mention the emerald trees. Do any of these properties have trees that need to be removed? And is that I guess our responsibility if there are, or?
Yeah, the only one I would consider that needed removing was at the North Shore Trail Nature Area. I'll give a quick summary of what that looked like too. For North Shore Trail Nature Area, we just did a quick hazard assessment. What is the risk of this tree falling versus the harm that it can cause? And since we're identifying that area as a place that would be open to the public, we did make an effort to remove hazard trees. Ash in general, the consensus seems to be at this point, if there's no good cause to remove them, you might as well leave them up. There's not a super compelling, reason to take them down. They are providing some limited habitat, even just as they're standing as dead trees. And so the only one we've done is North Shore Trail Nature Area had some removal.
Thanks.
Which is what I'll talk about now. So I think this is probably a refresher for most folks, but this site was acquired in 2022 using the DNR funds from the CPL grant program. And then we received funding as part of a larger grant in partnership with Great River Greening from the LCCMR, and that was for the restoration. So starting in, it would have been winter of 2023. Yes. We did that hazard tree removal. So we removed about 100 trees that were in proximity to what we had identified as some trail areas. And then we used those trails or the wood chips from those trees to create those trails. So far we have the ash tree removal completed, trail construction, and then we've had 2 seasons now of invasive species treatment and removal, which has essentially culminated in a volunteer event last week. We had about 30 volunteers out for a shrub planting and seeding of the area. And we'll continue to have contractors out there throughout the growing season doing some invasive species treatment and watering those shrubs. And then there's potential for that contract to culminate in a burn of that site, a prescribed burn, depending on the conditions. So that will be the closeout of that contract this year. And we'll kind of revert back to our management plan to continue the restoration efforts just as staff. Couple picture highlights here. You can see that's some of the hazard tree removal. It's tough to see those trees going down, but it did open up the canopy and provide some opportunities. This is the shrub planting. I tried to find analogous photo points here. We planted, I believe, 120 shrubs. So all native plants that have pretty high wildlife value, most of which have edible berries to humans. Once we get those established, we'll have to make sure we have some good signage to identify what can and cannot be eaten. But should be a good opportunity for folks to have nature hikes and for staff to add, future education events out there. Here's another shot of that shrub planting. In addition to the 120 shrubs, we planted about just under 2 acres of seeding out there just to kind of refresh that native seed bank, which, the site is pretty high quality, but we certainly have some depletion in the diversity of the site. So the seeding has kind of jump-started that. And then we have a couple of our staff assisting with the event. Any questions before I pivot to this last slide on the Bone Lake South wetland acquisition? So kind of the next big news in our land management and acquisition program is the Bone Lake South property acquisition. So we are on track with the signed purchase agreement of the 236 acres just south of Bone Lake. And then we will be working on we've applied for the Large Sam's Outdoor Heritage Fund grant for the restoration of that acquisition. So that's all part of that same land acquisition and management project or program where, we are acquiring these properties. We're very actively looking for these properties to have concrete water quality objectives, but also in the case of North Shore Trail Nature Area, some really quality habitat benefit as well. And in the case of Bone Lake South, some really serious water storage benefits as well. And that is that. Any questions or any slides you'd like to go back to?
President Anderson, are you able to?
Mr. Bakke, go ahead.
President Anderson, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. I think kudos is really in order for Mike and Aiden and the staff for persevering on this Bone Lake South Wetland project. When this started years ago, there was so much excitement around Bone Lake. And then as the years dragged on, people started doubting whether it would really happen. And here we are. So this is really kudos to the staff for hanging in there and persevering on this project. As we know, it will provide big benefits. My question, if we can address this, is the owner is retaining 81 acres. Is there any indication as to what they plan to do with their 81 acres?
Manager Bakke, I would have to defer to Administrator Kinney if he has any information on that. I do want to highlight his comment in the chat as well, that Blaine has really been the workhorse of getting this across the finish line with significant contributions from other staff as well.
Yes, I owe Blaine a cup of coffee or something.
I'm sure he'll take you up on it. Once we wrap it up. So presently, the owner intends to sell the remaining 81 acres. Wanted to conclude this piece first, and then just for whatever particular reason felt that this was a good, as I understand it, a good acreage amount that would be desirable for somebody. So, but at least in the last meeting that I was at with the owner, that was the indication, her intention of selling it.
Okay, but we're staying on top of that, correct?
Madam President, could you clarify what you mean that?
We're staying on top of the situation, basically. So that's
Yeah.
what you know now, and it's probably evolving, I'm sure.
Correct, but I felt we did want to make sure before we started making any suggestions of the remaining, if there was interest by the board, if we wanted to apply for more grants or some additional portion of the remaining 81, but it just felt like we needed to, rather than biting off more than we can chew, to get this concluded, and then also we'll know by September, October, we'll have a pretty good indication as to what our status is on the next phase in terms of the restoration part.
Mhm.
But
As long as we've got that picture up, where is the remaining 81 acres? Is it close to the lake or?
It's the orange.
no, it's the to the west, to the left along Lofton Avenue there. It's
Okay.
just a lighter color. It's a different kind of orange color there.
Okay. All right.
With
Any
buildings.
further questions? No? All right, let's move on. Report of managers. I'll start with you, Manager Baki. Anything?
Yes, as part of the administrative review, we've conducted quarterly meetings with Mr. Kinney. And at the end of March, Manager Schmaltz and I met with Mr. Kinney. We need to schedule the second quarterly meeting the end of June. And I believe Manager Anderson, you're volunteering to be a part of that. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, great. Well, if Mr. Kinney can communicate with us, we'll get that scheduled, and that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Manager Taves,
Nothing here.
Manager Loth,
I have nothing to report.
Manager Schmaltz.
Nothing. I heard that the meeting with with the Willow Point owner went well, but haven't heard any of the details. Have you heard anything more, Mike? Since then, I wrote a note to Jerry Gruntner, but he hasn't gotten back to me. So
I have
we'll have to
not.
wait and see what happens. Nothing.
Okay. Nothing? Okay.
Nope.
I just wanted to update the board. I was able to connect with the person at the DNR that is over this shoreland area for our situation here. But there's some caveats. Her name is Emily Javins. And Mike, I know, has worked with her in the past, and she is the former executive director for MAUD. And so she's now sort of an assistant commissioner in this area for the department. And we had a nice chat. She was very concerned with what I was telling her. She did outline that they are restricted, of course, to the ordinary high water level. I didn't know this, but in this area and some of the other areas that she's responsible for, the ordinary high water can be quite substantially, in a linear way, goes up quite a bit onto the properties because of the high water tables and the low waters in certain lakes in the area. So she did say that she needed to look into that. I wasn't sure where the ordinary high water mark was on Willow Point, whether it's right on the shoreline or it goes back into the property more. But that makes a difference. She was gonna talk to the conservation people in that area and was quick to say that she is not over them. They don't report to her, but she works with them all the time. And we'll try to get the right people in that area to contact our staff. I gave them Mike Kenny's name and Mike Sandiger. And so we'll see what happens with that. She seemed alarmed at the amount of shoreline that was disturbed. So it's ongoing. I just wanted to let you know that we have two contacts now that are aware of this high up in the DNR. One is her and the other one is Shannon Lotthammer. I think I told the board about this last month. She was the first person to work with the local people to develop the first diagnostic study of Comfort Lake and the precursor to our watershed starting. So pretty high up, they're both very concerned. They want to be continually updated on our progress here and just wanted to let the board know that we've got some people that know about it and are willing to do whatever they can to help us. Okay, so that's it. Mike, you were gonna call somebody from DNR. Have you contacted your person? Did you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay,
No.
all right, very good. Mr. Holtman, do we have anything for you to review?
Madam Chair,
Mm-hmm, yes,
I have that, you and I will talk about the, resolution concerning the levy statute.
okay,
Staff will reformat the strategic plan to remove the middle column. And then, staff will, revise the notice and renotice for the special meeting on Monday. In the meantime, they'll prepare the finalized strategic plan. And, then the cover letter will be developed after that and come to the board. And that's what I have.
all right, very good. There's no further business before the board, so a motion to adjourn is in order.
I'll move
I will make a mo-
Go ahead, Steve, you can have it.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Hey, Manager Lowe,
Aye.
Manager Schmaltz,
Aye.
Manager Baki,
Aye.
Manager Taves,
Aye.
President Anderson.
Aye. Good night.
Good
Right.
meeting, everyone, and we're done early again. You got a streak going, President Anderson.
Yeah, well, I aim to please, you know.
Thanks,
Good night.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah,
Good
bye-bye.
night.
Thanks.